Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots. Foolish shows desolate serfs, peasants, vassals, bankers. I'm Useful Idiot, and today I'd like to talk a little bit more about the LIBOR scandal, and specifically the fact that the interest rate rigging and fraud has been going on for decades, and there should be no surprise there. But that is the new revelation about the LIBOR interest rate rigging scandal. It involves all the biggest banks in Europe and America and elsewhere. And this is a really interesting story because Richard Robb, who was CEO of Christopherson, Robb and Company, an investment management firm, published a piece in American Banker recently, and he said that going back to November 1996, he warned regulators about LIBOR manipulation and, of course, was ignored. And he points out that the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, who was the regulator at that time, or one of the regulators, had a near foolproof method for discovering if there was any interest rate manipulation going on. And that's by using random samples from different banks. And that worked very well. But for some reason, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange wanted to adapt the British Bankers Association method instead, which asks the same banks each and every day what their interest rate moves are and what their borrowing costs are. And that made it very easy to game the system. And that was the whole point, because the Chicago Mercantile Exchange wanted to adopt the British Bankers Association because, as we have learned over the years, the British banking system is even more corrupt and fraudulent than the United States banking system. And their systems are all set up for all kinds of manipulation. So why wouldn't the Chicago Mercantile Exchange want to adopt their methods? And in 1996, Mr. Robb also contacted the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and another regulator, and he was ignored. So, of course, how ironic it is that 16 years later, now the Commodity Futures Trading Commission is collecting millions of dollars of fines from all these banks for interest rate manipulation. And, of course, they've been ignoring it for the last 16 years. But now they get to cash in on it because, well, they got caught. And even more interestingly, of course, is the fact that a former Morgan Stanley trader recently said that LIBOR manipulation was an accepted and commonly known practice as far back as 1991. And anybody that expressed any kind of shock or surprise that the interest rate manipulation was going on would have been laughed out of the room. So this tells us that it's been going on for at least 20 years and probably a lot longer than that. And it's just an accepted practice in the banking industry, a banking industry built on fraud. And this is a prime example of that. So the very core of the financial industry and accounting practices has been corrupt and fraudulent for over 2 to 3 decades at least. And of course, Geithner is a good clue to this. Timothy Geithner, who is now the Treasury Secretary of the United States. In 2008, of course, he was head of the New York Federal Reserve. And he now says he didn't find out about LIBOR manipulation until the economic collapse and financial crisis of 2008, which is really a stretch because he's head of the New York Federal Reserve. And if a CEO of an investment management firm and a Morgan Stanley trader knew that LIBOR fraud was going on a daily basis, certainly the guy who heads the New York Federal Reserve knew all about it too. And in fact, even when he found out, supposedly just found out in 2008, Timothy Geithner quietly just sent memos to Barclays and other banks involved and said maybe you shouldn't do that. And so anyway, this is an interesting part of this story, and no surprise, just confirms what we could have already guessed, which is that the banking industry has been manipulating interest rates and indulging in fraud for decades and decades, and it's a standard of the industry, and almost everyone knew about it. And as a matter of fact, there was even a person within the Federal Reserve, an analyst, who wrote a paper in 1998 warning of the ease of manipulating LIBOR interest rates. And let me remind you that these overnight London bank borrowing rates, interbank borrowing rates, are the foundation for all the financial transactions around the globe on a daily basis daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, yearly, every single financial transaction, $800 trillion worth of transactions a year, are all based on these fraudulent, manipulated interbank interest rates. So this is a big deal. So now we have more confirmation that this is not an anomaly, and this is not a surprise. This is an accepted practice in the industry, a standard. Everyone knew about it. Everyone was doing it. And the only problem now is they got caught. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.